Yeah, I'll react to that, sure. Okay, hey guys. The Dassault, I got asked, I watched a video on the Gripen, the Swedish Gripen fighter jet. I saw in the comments someone asked me to check out this one, and that's what I'm doing. So, hey guys, I just ate lunch. I don't know why I need to tell you that. That was pointless. It was very good though, buffalo chicken sandwich. The Dassault wow. The Dassault Rafale, the plane that beat the F-16. Great intro.
Can't defend itself in the air.
Take it away, Simon. Hope everyone's doing well. Let's get ready to learn. And I'm all over the place.
If a modern nation can't defend itself in the air, it can't defend itself at all. And when there are no aircraft suitable for a nation to buy, then it'll have to make the perfect aircraft by itself. In the late 1970s, the nation of France found itself in this very situation, frustrated and ready to give up on an international effort to build a fighter aircraft that would undoubtedly be of a high quality, but simply wouldn't suit France's needs. In such a predicament, France could grit its teeth and endure its European partners. It could
I gotta shut up. I'm talking too much already. What did he say there?
Aircraft that would undoubtedly be frustrated and ready to give up on an international effort to build a fighter aircraft that would undoubtedly be of a high quality, but simply wouldn't suit France's needs. In such a predicament, France could grit its teeth and endure its European partners. It could seek a different aircraft from the United States, or it could choose to go it alone, betting on itself to produce a fighter that would either plunge France into an embarrassing financial disaster or pay off in a spectacular fashion. In the face of those odds, France chose to go it alone. And the results? Well, that's the Dassault Rafale, a highly capable omni-role fighter that has since proven itself among the best fourth-generation aircraft in the world. So in today's episode, we're going to explore just how the Rafale came to be and just how it set itself apart from...
Just another example of why I love France so much. I love a lot of countries. I don't hate any country. At least any country's people. Maybe there's a few governments I don't like. Russia. China. But that another example of France that just knew all along, however much the United States might seem like an ally at the time, you want to be able to create a military where you can fight by yourself, even if it never comes to where you have to do that. But just, the United States is one of the few countries in the world that can just, any military option it thinks it needs to take wherever it wants, it can do it on its own. But a lot of European countries, I think sometimes by design, by the United States, don't have integrated militaries. Some NATO countries in Europe are really good at one thing, others are really good at another. But that makes it so you still can't really fight on your own, you know? And France has always known that. I respect the hell out of it.
All the competition around the globe.
Frustrations and adaptation.
Now, the last few decades of the Cold War were a tricky time to be developing a fighter aircraft. Across the Iron Curtain, the Soviet Union was almost certainly building newer, better, and more formidable fighter aircraft. But with few conflicts that required direct Soviet intervention, there was no real way for the West to see those fighters in action, nor to know exactly how much of a problem they could eventually be. This strategic and tactical discomfort made it difficult to justify large-scale expenditures on a wide range of fighter aircraft, certainly not if they were meant to be a direct response to Soviet air power. I mean, after all, how could a nation...
So because they couldn't see a lot of conflicts around the world where they would have to go against the Soviets, they didn't really feel the need yet to put this into hyperdrive of creating new stuff, right?
Direct response to Soviet air power. I mean, after all, how could a nation know how to respond if they didn't know or understand the threat that they were even responding to?
Fair.
This lack of specificity about Soviet capabilities led Europe and the United States to focus on the so-called multi-role aircraft. On the American side, this included the F-16 Fighting Falcon and the F-15 Eagle, especially its dedicated multi-role successor, the the F-15E Strike Eagle. In Europe, though, the need for a multi-role aircraft wasn't going to be met exclusively by one nation. Instead, it was going to be met by committee and a union between NATO countries to produce what would basically be a NATO aircraft. By the late 1970s, France understood that for its own part, a new fighter aircraft was going to be necessary sooner rather than later. Prior fighters included the Dassault Mirage series and the Sepacat Jaguar strike aircrafts, but these were quickly becoming obsolete, and though the Dassault Mirage 2000, which was new at the time, certainly wasn't a bad successor aircraft, it was sure to be surpassed by the next generation of Soviet aircraft within a decade or so. The French Navy's situation was even worse. The Naval Air Fleet was badly in need of an upgrade from its prior strike aircraft, which were all but guaranteed to underperform in a modern large-scale war. In 1975, the French Ministry of Aviation decided to address the Air Force and Navy's problems all at once and issued a call for a new generation of fighter aircraft that would complement the Mirage 2000 to replace just about everything else in French service at that time. Around the same time period, West German and British aerospace companies have been working toward a potential joint effort to produce a collaborative fighter aircraft, and the French aviation company Dassault Brigade, today known as Dassault Aviation, took its opportunity to get in on that action. Dassault Brigade proposed a general layout for what it wanted in a fighter aircraft, including a twin-engine, single-seat design, and the partner nations all agreed with that arrangement in principle, but the participants had trouble coming to any further agreements. By 1981, the project collapsed, leaving Dassault on its own to figure out what on earth to do next. Before long, though, a new international collaboration rose to fill the gap that the last attempt had left in its wake. Dubbed the Future European Fighter Aircraft Program, the initiative brought together Spain, Britain, Italy, France, and West Germany in 1983 with the goal of developing a shared jet fighter. But yet again, the participating nations had a hard time deciding what they would build. France wanted a multi-role aircraft that could serve both in Air Force and naval roles and could be sold as an export product, whereas Britain wanted a long-range interceptor. Perhaps most problematic for the other countries, though, France demanded that it would take the lead in the project, causing a somewhat foul impression among the other countries who were more than happy to just share the project without worrying too much about who got credit for what. Within 2 years, France walked away from the program for good in order to preserve its own technological independence as a leader in aerospace development. The other 4 nations proceeded with their program anyway, and eventually they'd build the Eurofighter Typhoon, a capable multi-role fighter in its own right. Now on their own, Dassault set to work making what France really wanted: a fighter aircraft that could complete air-to-air and air-to-ground missions day and night in all weather, both with the Air Force and the Navy. The plane would weigh about 10 tons, carry at least 6 air-to-air missiles or 3,500 kilograms of other payload, and fly at a range of 650 kilometers. If it could do all of that, the new aircraft would replace no fewer than 6 types of fighter and attack jets in the French arsenal. Unlike aircraft development programs in other countries, Dassault didn't have to worry much about competition from French aeronautical companies, and they had the capacity to produce their fighter almost entirely indigenously, using a digital design system all the way back in the early 1980s to aid the process. Dassault favored a delta wing design for the aircraft, integrating a set of close-coupled canards, little winglets placed near the cockpit and ahead of the larger wings in order to make a highly maneuverable plane.
These things.
By 1985, they were able to provide the French government with a technology demonstrator featuring a single-seat cockpit and 2...
So would this mean that, like, these, what did he call them?
Creating a set of close-coupled canards, little winglets placed near the...
Close-coupled canards. So these things for maneuverability, so that I'm assuming they can do this, flap up or flap down, and so if this side were to flap up and this side were to flap down, then that would make a quick rotation this way, right? Right? So it would be easier just for quick, agile maneuvers.
Cockpit and ahead of the larger wings in order to make a highly maneuverable...
Also, what is that? Is that a fuel port for in-air fueling?
Planes, little winglets placed near the cockpit and ahead of the larger wings in order to make a highly maneuverable plane. By 1985, they were able to provide the French government with a technology demonstrator featuring a single-seat cockpit and 2 afterburning turbofan engines similar to the American FA-18, which were placeholders for a Dassault design that were well on their way by that time. It took its first flight on the 4th of July 1986, immediately exceeding Mach 1.3 and hit Mach 1.8 a little while after. 2 months later, it appeared in public for the first time. And between
Mach 1.3 is like 1,000 miles an hour, right? Because I think Mach 1 speed of sound is in the 700s. So 0.3, around 1,000 miles an hour.
1.8 a little while after. 2 months later, it appeared in public for the first time. And between its series of successful test flights and its positive early signs that it could be modified for carrier service, the Dassault plane received its first production order by 1988. By that time, its name was widely known: the Rafale.
So modified for carrier service, right? So what would those modifications needed be? So obviously the hook for like the grappling system, it would have to have the ability to land and take off on a relatively short runway. Depending on if you have those wires that with the claw that catches for landing, and if you have the projection catapult for taking off. Also, I noticed that a lot of air like stacking the planes on an aircraft. I don't know if some have foldable up wings, but I'd be assuming those are the things of making an aircraft carrier viable, right?
The burst of fire. Now, when the Rafale first emerged from the production line, it came in 3 versions. The prototype had been referred to as the Rafale A, so the first production line variant was termed the Rafale B, a 2-seater Air Force design built to take off and land on runways. The Rafale C was a single-seat version, also built to operate from land, and the Rafale M for Marine was built for the Naval Air Arm. By the mid-1990s, all of the variant designs had completed their required testing, and the M variant had even taken a quick working vacation to the United States to be launched from a catapult in carrier op simulations. Although the 3 variants each have their own specs, we'll run down the numbers on the single-seater C variant as a baseline. At an overall length of 15 meters, 50 feet, and a wingspan of about 11 meters or 36 feet, the Rafale is a sleek and efficient design. Due to its delta wing design, the plane's wings have a surface area that would put a Manhattan studio apartment to shame at just under 500 square feet or 46 square meters. When it sits empty, the Rafale weighs a hair under 10,000 kilograms, though it can take off at 24,500 kilograms, nearly 2.5 times its empty weight. It does this with the help of 2 turbofans with over 11,000 pound force of thrust each, pushing it to a maximum speed of 1,912 kilometers or 1,188 miles per hour at high altitude, which is 1.8 times the speed of sound. The Rafale reaches supercruise at Mach 1.4 with afterburners switched off, and with a combat range of 1,850 kilometers, 1,150 miles using drop tanks, it's more than capable of providing coverage.
Okay, yeah, that is what it is. Okay.
Kilometers, 1,150 miles using drop tanks, it's more than capable of providing coverage to France and its NATO allies in Western Europe. The Rafale flies at a service ceiling of about 16 kilometers from the ground or 52,000 feet, and it's capable of making that climb in under a minute. In terms of its armaments, the Rafale...
And I'm wondering what the limitations of height are. Does the air just get too thin for your plane to experience the forces it needs to fly? Or is going any higher than that just not a good idea because of fuel?
A 30mm autocannon with 125...
Holy moly, crap-a-moly. That Swedish, I gotta say, that Swedish Gripen fighter video I watched a few days ago had the coolest missile launching thing I've ever seen. It was like a Gatling gun of missiles.
Rounds and 14 external hardpoints, although naval models have only 13. With these, the Rafale is capable of carrying over 10 tons, 9,500 kilograms of ordnance, including air-to-air, air-to-ground, air-to-ship, and nuclear missiles, as well as reconnaissance and targeting pods, guided munitions, or up to 5 drop tanks.
I'm surprised that these 2 hooks, I'd imagine this is a pretty heavy thing, that these 2 hooks of metal could support that weight, especially with all of the forces. It's interesting.
The plane missiles, as well as reconnaissance and targeting pods, guided munitions, or up to 5 drop tanks. The plane is fitted out with advanced radar, a unique electronic warfare system, and a long-range optoelectronic system which allows a pilot to identify and track targets in real time, with matching video input for the pilot at ranges of up to 100 kilometers in the air or 6 kilometers against surface targets. The system can track and engage up to 40 targets and engage up to 8 targets at once while continuously performing friend or foe checks during dogfights. The cockpit is sleek and incorporates no unnecessary bells and whistles, using that space instead to provide.
This might be a stupid question, but you guys know how
targets in real time matters against surface targets. The system can friend or foe to define and track targets in and or up to
where was it?
Matching video input
Right here.
for the pilot.
So you know how there's tank armor that has sort of explosives on the outside of the tank, so that when a round or a javelin or RPG something hits the tank, it can actually explode the explosives on the tank to minimize damage. I think I'm getting my own answer to this. Could they have a similar thing on a plane? But a plane isn't as robust as a tank, and so I'm sure that isn't feasible. Never mind.
Range even be voice activated generation system, input panels, and a holographic heads-up display. It features an onboard oxygen generation system, eliminating the need for oxygen canisters, and some of its capabilities can even be voice activated by the pilot without any physical input. Finally, some versions of the Rafale marketed in their early years as the Rafale DD, standing for discreet, in reference to its semi-stealthy design featuring a low radar cross-section. In practice, the Rafale has proven itself safe and easy to fly, and it's been of significant utility to both the French armed forces and the other nations that have acquired their own. It's highly agile, using a fly-by-wire system to keep it in check, and is made intentionally to be somewhat unstable in flight, cutting down on the standard forces of inertia that would make banking, climbing, or diving into a somewhat slower process in other aircraft. For carrier operations, the plane's delta wings give it an uncommonly low landing speed, greatly reducing the risk of accidents. It's proven to be reliable in flight, and it's easily maintained even under difficult conditions. Its suite of bombs, missiles, and other accoutrements, many of which were designed specifically for the Rafale, have been more than able to match the plane's high performance in combat zones, and all the plane's integrated technology is held up under scrutiny in the years after it was adopted. The plane is capable of automatically navigating surface terrain, including in environments where an enemy is using electronic jamming, and its defensive countermeasure system allows it to automatically take defensive actions even without pilot input. Although a handful of the Rafale's components were sourced internationally, including its ejection seat, the vast majority of the plane's hardware and technology are produced and provided by French industry. All things considered, the plane was, and is, extremely impressive from a technological perspective, with technical capabilities that put it on par with the best fighter aircraft of its day.
Also, if I can see where it was. Right here. You can see how these thingamajigs, I forget what it's called already, are tilted upward.
Early years as the Rafale.
Which would mean that when air is coming at the plane, the air is going to hit these things and want to push these two things upward, which are attached to the plane, and therefore push the nose upward. Am I right there? I think.
DD standing for discreet in reference. Despite the fact that the Rafale was, on paper, a resounding success for the French armed forces, it experienced a rather difficult entry into the wider world. Initially conceived in the waning years of the Cold War, the Rafale had become production-ready significantly after the fall of the Soviet Union, meaning that the major threat the Rafale was meant to deter and defend against, it no longer existed. As Western defense budgets were reined back in and the global military-industrial complex took a much-needed moment to breathe, France began to reconsider just how vital the Rafale was, or wasn't, to the
regardless of what conflict you were preparing for with this aircraft, whether it stopped, you now know the so much more experience than many other countries of what it takes to develop your own aircraft. And so that's experience that can't be lost, even if the initial purpose of the aircraft is lost. So Just gonna say that.
various military roles that was meant to fill. The Rafale was most necessary in the French Navy, where it was desperately sought after as a replacement to the Vought Crusader, an esteemed but by then badly outdated warplane. The first M variant Rafales were delivered to the Charles de Gaulle aircraft carrier in late 2001, and a full squadron was operational within a few months. But these aircraft were pieced together hurriedly, lacking many of the advanced features that the Rafale would later be known for, and they were upgraded to standard years after they first arrived. In fact, the Rafale in general was introduced piecemeal, with that rather low-quality air-to-air optimized version of the early days known as the F-1 replaced a few years later with a somewhat more well-rounded F-2 version, and then only in 2009 with the completed F-3 version that finally delivered the Rafales promised. Luckily for the French military, all Rafales in service were eventually upgraded to the F-3 version. Since then, the F-3R or F-3 Plus upgrade has further optimized the Rafale to make it more enticing as an export fighter, incorporating new radar technologies that were also added to French models. The F-3 Plus also integrated newer avionics, a data link that could merge it seamlessly into coalition operations, and a new targeting system. The later F-4 upgrade was announced in 2017, and the prototype took its first flight in 2021. Yet again, the newest upgrade brings the plane's technology and software up to the cutting edge, and there are further ongoing discussions about how to upgrade the Rafale's stealth capabilities in the future. As of now, the French Air and Space Force flies 102 Rafales, and the French Navy uses another 42. Around the world, export versions of the Rafale have been adopted by a range of customers. Egypt flies 24 of the planes, with another 30 on order, placing them at the center of a diverse fleet that includes hundreds of American-made F-16s, dozens of French Mirage jets, and dozens more Soviet-era MiG-29s. The Greek Hellenic Air Force will fly a total of 24 Rafales once they're all delivered, also alongside American F-16s. And in India, 36 Rafales stand out among hundreds of Russian and Soviet-era planes, well over 100 anticipated Indian-made Teja fighters, and Sepakat Jaguars. Qatar relies heavily on the Rafale as the main component of its air defense, backed up by F-15E Strike Eagles and 24 anticipated Eurofighter Typhoon aircraft produced from the same European initiative that
I feel like India more so than any other country. Maybe Saudi Arabia, maybe Turkey, but India more than any other countries. I feel like India is in a very enviable position in international relations because they're kind of the center guy. They're like the on the fence guy. Like they're seemed at like they have a lot of potential, huge population, strategically important for many countries, and they just seem like they're the country more than any other that can like go to any side of like the global kind of hate divide and just like, hey, yeah, I'll take this. Hey, I'll take this. And both sides are just like, yeah. Like, I think that's an enviable position that India is in, where like they're not staunch, full-on allies of anyone, and they're not staunch, full-on adversaries of anyone. And that's not a bad place to be in.
France left in order to build the Rafale. The United Arab Emirates have 80 Rafales on order, Indonesia is waiting for 42, and Croatia expects to receive 12 in the next 2 years. Most recently, Iraq is looking to trade oil directly in exchange for at least 14 of the jets, which would provide significantly improved interceptor capabilities compared to its current fleet of American F-16s. Colombia, Saudi Arabia, Serbia are all potentially customers, and the Rafale has been discussed as a potential option to support Ukrainian troops in their ongoing war with Russia. The Rafale was first deployed to a combat zone during Mission Hercules, France's mission to support Operation Enduring Freedom in Afghanistan, but due to the limited capabilities of the earlier Rafales of that time, they saw no direct combat. Their operational debut came several years later, when in March of 2007, a handful of Rafales supported Dutch troops in southern Afghanistan. In the following years, Rafales would support NATO troops in Afghanistan and carry out strikes in Libya during the effort to bring down the Gaddafi regime, which ironically had failed in its own bid to acquire Rafales just a few years prior. In Libya, the Rafale got to show off its advanced onboard capabilities. Of all the coalition aircraft involved in the operation, the Rafale was the only fighter that didn't require direct support from an electronic warfare system. In long, standardized 6-hour missions, Rafales kept a nearly consistent presence in the skies in an effort that, intentionally or not, had a clear effect in enticing export customers to consider the plane. In later years, Rafales had been instrumental in French interventions against jihadists in Mali and against Islamic State targets in Syria, including in direct retaliation for the Paris attacks 2015. Although details are unknown, it's believed that the Rafale scored its first air-to-air kill against an unknown drone in 2019.
How does it compare?
So all things considered, the Rafale is a spectacular piece of combat innovation, and although it doesn't incorporate the stealth technology that would put it on par with fifth-generation fighters like the American F-22 or the Chinese J-20, it is nonetheless the leading edge of the so-called 4.5 generation of fighter aircraft.
It's not just that. It's the gained experience that France gets from sourcing their own aircraft. That experience cannot be understated, in my opinion. Experience. Your experience in logistics, your experience in creating your own mostly indigenous military equipment, that your experience in warfare, that cannot be understated. That tells what on paper statistics cannot, and it cannot be overstated. Even if the French jet here wasn't nearly as good as other similar generation fighter jets, it is the experience they get from building such a thing that other countries won't have. And especially when times like now, when, like right now, I'm trying to invest in French, in German, in Swedish defense companies, because whether or not the Trump administration changes, or when Trump presidency ends in 2028, there's still going to be that, even if there's a more pro-NATO person elected after him, America has still showed that they can't really be relied on for consistent allyship, And so if you're a country like France who has experience in this thing, guess where European countries who are afraid now of American reliance are going to go to? Experience, like in France. That's what I'll say.
That being said, the Rafale has also lost more export contracts than it's won, generally losing to competing American or European models. So how does the Rafale stack up to other modern advanced multi-role fighters, say for example the American F-16, the Russian Su-35, and the Eurofighter Typhoon? Well, first of all, there's the basics. In terms of its size and weight, the Rafale is similar to the F-16 and the Typhoon, and significantly smaller than the Su-35. Its engines are relatively underpowered in comparison, and it's got a slower maximum speed than any of those three competitors. It's got a service ceiling equal or lower than all three of them, and its range is nothing to write home about in comparison. It's got only one or two more hard points than each competitor aircraft, and its rate of climb is solidly middle of the pack. But these comparisons only tell part of this aircraft's story and leave out the advantages that are most important in a modern multi-role aircraft, and it is these exact areas where the Rafale really shines. First, there's maneuverability, where the Rafale takes a clear advantage against each of the competitor aircraft. The Rafale's delta wing shape is a significantly more useful design for close air engagements than the standard wings of the F-16 and Su-35, and it's more agile than the Typhoon, meaning that if the Rafale were to ever have to face off in a dogfighter capacity with any of these three competitors, it would be at a significant advantage. The Rafale's avionics are better optimized to...
So it seems like, compared to an F-35, if the F-35, I believe, from what I've learned, let me know if I'm wrong, excels at its ability to see its target aircraft well before they can see it, and then can take it out before they even see the F-35 on their radar, But if you have to go into dodging missiles coming after you, dodging attacks, or getting up close and personal in dog attacks, then I'd imagine a plane like this, it would be way better than the F-35.
It would be at a significant advantage. The Rafale's avionics are better optimized to support these sorts of engagements, especially in large, chaotic battle environments, and in the longer-range air-to-air combat we would expect between advanced fighter aircraft. The Rafale's available armaments do well at medium range, while its partial automation of its defensive capabilities have proven effective in real-life combat.
I want to make the analogy to like a sniper rifle versus a assault rifle, okay? At a mile's distance, I'll take the sniper rifle, okay? In 100 yards distance to 50 yards, then the assault rifle is going to win every time. So Is that a good analogy? Maybe?
Perhaps even more important are the Rafale's electronic warfare capabilities. In a direct air-to-air face-off done by the Egyptian Air Force, which flies both Rafales and Su-35s, the Rafale was able to render the Su-35's radar useless with its own electronic jamming suite, then lock on and demonstrate its ability to shoot down the Su-35 with the Su-35's own jamming device, utterly unable to stop the Rafale from doing so. Those same electronic jammers on the Rafale should, in theory, be able to do the same to at least older F-16 models, if not the newer ones, as well as the Eurofighter Typhoon. And more relevant in regard to their shared place as a multi-role aircraft, the Rafale's ability to operate without electronic warfare support planes, its advanced suite of avionics, and its seamless integration of many autonomous support elements make it a far more advanced warplane. That technology puts it clearly ahead, not just in terms of direct air-to-air battles, but in its ability to do its work as a fighter aircraft. And although top-of-the-line warplanes of the 21st century will undoubtedly surpass those capabilities, it still bears emphasizing just how advanced the Rafale is compared to its direct competitor aircraft. With the Rafale now firmly entrenched as a favorite of the French military and unlikely to be knocked off its perch by anything less than a future sixth-generation fighter, it shouldn't be a surprise that the plane's aerodynamic and technological capabilities are among the best out there. In a direct competition with global aviation powerhouses like the US, the Soviet Union, and some of the European Union's most advanced nations, the French Rafale doesn't just hold its own, it stands out on its own merits as a firmly established leader among fourth-generation aircraft. The Rafale isn't even at the halfway point of its
A firmly established leader among fourth-generation aircraft production as well. I hope you understand my difference.
Firmly established leader among fourth-generation aircraft. The Rafale isn't even at the halfway point of its expected service life, and it's still in active production for French and export customers around the world. So whatever the Rafale's future might be, it's safe to say that it's really only just getting started.
Again, I'm going to reiterate, great video by Simon, Mega Projects. I'm going to reiterate the main point I'm trying to make throughout the video is that it's not, to me, the most important thing is how good this aircraft is compared to other similar aircrafts is not, as much as it excels, is not as important as the experience France gains by creating their own indigenous aircraft in a time where past military partners who send weapons are becoming less reliable. You will have that experience where other people don't. And I think that can't be understated. And I think it probably should have been pointed out a little bit more. So, love y'all. Would appreciate any comments down below. Hope everyone enjoyed the video, learned something, or could teach me something. Love you guys in the comments all the time. You're awesome. And hopefully I'll see you guys next time. We'll keep on learning. See you later. Bye.